What's up, guys? We are back from vacation and a trade has happened. Shea Weber's contract has been traded to the Las Vegas Golden Knights for Evgenii Dadonov. This is not the first time Las Vegas tried moving him. They tried dealing him at the deadline to the Ducks, but there was a whole complication in terms of his no trade clause move, and he did not waive that. And what happened was is that the deal was nixed ultimately, which sucked for both
Yeah.
sides. And ultimately, they do not revisit that deal, and they decide to trade with Kent Hughes of the Montreal Canadiens. And now Evgeny Dandonov, even though he hasn't been the greatest and he is 33 years old, he is a active player, unlike Shea Weber.
Well, I like it. Honestly, I really do. I think for the Canadians and I think for Kent Hughes in particular, I think for both teams, actually, it makes a lot of sense. I think for the Canadians, you free up 4 years of Shea Weber's contract at $7.8 million. And basically, he's never going to play again. And I know that people say, oh, but they've got LTIR. The problem is that Carey Price, right? Because Carey Price is on that $10 million contract, it puts Montreal in a tough spot because then they're going to have him and Weber on LTIR, and it doesn't work. So trading away Shea Weber makes a lot of sense. And then you trade him to a team like Vegas, who's already in cap trouble. Well, it allows Vegas to put Shea Weber on LTIR come the start of the NHL season. It frees up about $7 million in cap space, even if it's not technically $7 million in cap space, because they're not able to use it until the season starts anyways. But it helps out Vegas in that sense. What I like about this move for the Canadians is that they get a roster player in Evgenii Dadonov, a guy who's 33 years old. He's still got some fight in him. He's a 20-goal scorer. He scored 20 goals last year. He's a guy that I think even if the Canadians decide to keep him, I think he can help the Canadians next year. I really don't see much of an issue with it whatsoever because I think he's a good player and he's gonna help the team out in a lot of ways. But if the Canadians decide to trade him, he's got a year left on his deal. They can retain some salary on him as well, and they can try to move him and get draft picks out of it too. So the Canadians have a lot to work with here in terms of Dadonov. And whichever direction they decide to go to, even if they keep Dadonov until the trade deadline of next year, it's going to make the Canadians, it's going to help the Canadians and benefit the Canadians in a big way. And I think it works for both teams. I like this move for the Canadians first a lot more, though, as a Habs fan, because having Shea Weber's contract there for 4 years was a bit of a worry, and not having to worry about that is a good sign. Obviously, there's still Carey Price and that whole question mark, but that's not a worry for the moment because they can just throw him an LTIR and nothing's really going to change if he doesn't play. If he does play, then it becomes a different issue as well, which I'm sure Kent Hughes is going to deal with when that time comes. But surprise move today. We don't usually see trades happen during the playoffs like this, especially in the Stanley Cup final. So seeing a move like this is pretty surprising. But this prepares the Canadians for the trade deadline for the NHL draft and free agency. And we have a little bit more clarity on what the Canadians might be doing going into free agency in the draft. So really exciting times if you're a Canadians fan, really exciting time if you're a hockey fan too, because let the moves come. And obviously, as we know, there's also coaches being hired. We know that Vegas hired Bruce Cassidy as their coach as well. So a lot of moves happening around the NHL along with the Stanley Cup final. So it's going to be very interesting the next month for the NHL. So excited for that for sure.
Well, look, this shows that Kent Hughes is obviously willing to move on. It's time to move on. There was a lot of complaints from Montreal Canadian fans and also from the media saying why wasn't Shea Weber as present, even though he still held the title of captaincy, right? And now being able to move that contract, move that player, there's no more questions being asked. Now they could finally continue searching for that captain. We all assume that it's going to be Nick Suzuki just based off the interviews
Yeah.
that has been conducted with him, how he's matured so much during this season, and the fact that he's the most talented player on the Montreal Canadiens, and he's signed to a long-term deal. So I see this as a step in the right direction for Nick Suzuki to be the next captain. Now they traded their captain. It's funny how they traded their second captain to the Las Vegas Golden Knights. First you had Max Pacioretty, now you have Shea Weber. But just looking at Evgeny Dadonov's stats this year, 43 points in 78 games, 20 goals and 23 assists for a guy that's never going to play or potentially never going to play in the NHL ever again. It's
Yeah,
still impressive. We know
that's
his contract is not the greatest. We know he's up there in age. He's 33 years old, but this is still, an effective piece for Montreal. Moving forward, he could be a good veteran in the locker room, on the ice as well. And let's say if he does have a great season, they could move his contract at the trade deadline. This guy is definitely movable if he
yeah.
plays good and if
Well,
and if he's consistent. And under a guy like Martin St. Louis, I don't think there's any problem with that. I think that he could definitely flourish and obviously increase his trade value. And um, Luca, you were saying he has 1 year left on his contract. Is that
yeah,
correct?
at $5
So
million.
even that makes him even more movable now since he has 1 year left on his contract, right? So he's going to be a UFA at the end of the 2022-2023 regular season, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Habs, in my opinion, win this deal, but for many reasons that I just explained right now. But the reasoning behind this trade was that Vegas was trying to get Shea Weber's contract so they could put him on LTIR and make some cap space.
But the other thing too that I like about this move for the Canadians, right? And Kent Hughes is currently addressing the media, so I'm kind of like flipping through my phone a little bit. But in terms of what he brings to the Canadians, this allows the Canadians now to trade away some forwards. We heard about rumors about Josh Anderson likely being traded. We heard rumors about Mike Hoffman potentially being traded. We learned about how the Canadians are trying to move on from some guys, right? Joel Armia has been another guy that's been on trade rumors a lot. This allows the Canadians now to go out and potentially trade some more pieces, right? The Canadians are definitely not done. But what makes this entertaining is that even if they decide to keep Dadonov going into the regular season, this is a guy, like you mentioned, that still got a lot of good hockey left in him. I mean, he got 43 points last year on a Vegas team that missed out on the playoffs, and there was a lot of uncertainty with Dadonov because yes, he was playing and yes, he was playing well, but they weren't using him properly and he didn't really want to be there, and there was a lot of issues there. He still ended up putting 20 goals into the net. So I think even for the Canadians, regardless of whether they make the playoffs or not, they're getting, like you said, a veteran player who's going to be able to help them short term. And I think this is a 1 year thing. I don't know if the Dadonov comes back. I think he likely gets moved at the deadline if the Canadians are not in the playoff spot. But it's a good move, and I think for the Canadians, it now allows them to draft. They've got the first overall pick. They've got free agency coming up. They've got Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. It allows them to have another veteran presence in the room that's going to be there, that's going to help them out a little bit, and it's going to allow Caulfield and Suzuki to grow. Dadonov's still a good player. You could throw him on the power play. You could throw him on a 5-on-5. You could throw him on a line with Caulfield and Suzuki if you want to. And I think it makes a lot of sense for this team as well. And I think it gets the best out of those players as well.
And one thing I could say is that Montreal loves their Russians. It was very heartbreaking when Radulov was not coming back and he signed with Dallas. Then obviously, you had Alexei Kovalev a couple years before that. You had Alex Galchenyuk, even though he was American, a Russian last name. So, like, there's always been a lot of hype and praise around Russians in the Montreal market. So, I mean, obviously, it's exciting to have a Russian player come into the Montreal market once again. But is he going to have the same impact as some of those Russians in the past that played for Montreal? I don't really think so. He's up there in age. There's been a lack of consistency with this player. But look, after the move last year that was nixed, he was almost a points per game player until the end of the regular season.
That's crazy.
So I don't know if he was trying to do that to prove a point that he was worth something, or maybe it's because he got a lot more playing time. I have no clue what went down in Vegas, but Dadonov fully is capable of still playing some great hockey, and we've seen it.
Well, I think like you mentioned too, I think it was more of a situation of like trying to prove a point, but I think it's also just him being a good player. I think even when he was in Ottawa the year before that, you've got a situation here where he had 20 points in 55 games on a bad Senators team. Okay, fine. But he was still a decent asset for them, right? He still did some decent things, and I know he wasn't worth up his contract, but it allowed them to do exactly that. And I think for the expectation for Dadonov is just to come in and kind of be that veteran presence for the young kids. If he turns into another Alex Radulov, like Jaden just mentioned here, they're hoping for Radulov 2.0. I mean, if he does turn into another Radulov, great. If he doesn't, if he doesn't, like, oh well, either. Like, this is not. There's really no risk to this move for the Canadiens whatsoever. If Dadonov sucks, then you retain his salary and you trade him for a draft pick in the trade deadline. But if he's great, you get more out of him. And if not, then at the end of the year, you don't sign him. And either way, you moved on from Shea Weber's contract without having to give up a draft pick or give up any of your futures to do it. So, you look at it, and I'll give you another example. Look at the Dallas trade with Buffalo, right? They had to trade away Ben Bishop, and they had to trade away a draft pick to take on Ben Bishop's contract. Imagine the Canadiens traded. That's it. They had to the Montreal Canadiens traded away Shea Weber and still managed to get a roster player that's going to help them out now, whereas Dallas got essentially nothing, and Buffalo essentially got nothing. Buffalo got a draft pick. So,
it's all about the cap space.
It's a good move for the Canadiens. There's nothing really else I could really say to that.
I'm just shocked that
what's the surprise?
I was really shocked. I thought that Montreal was gonna complete their deal with Arizona that was in discussion back at the trade deadline this year. Because there was a lot of talk. Hughes even said there was a huge chance that Weber was gonna get traded to Arizona, but then it fell through at the end. So I thought they were going to pick up talks again. That deal was going to be completed. All of a sudden, I seen that he's going to the Vegas Golden Knights, and he's going for Dadonov. And we all knew Dadonov was going to get traded because, they tried moving him at the deadline to the Ducks, right? So, I mean, but for one-on-one, like, really, the guy's still capable of playing, and he's proven that this past season. In the second half of the regular season. So, I mean, it's a little bit bizarre for me, but, a lot of praise for Kent Hughes once again. In my eyes, another great trade that could benefit them even in the long term in terms of like the upcoming trade deadline. Is he going to get traded right now in the offseason, Dadonov? I highly doubt it. I see him playing for the Montreal Canadiens at the start of the season, and I see him being dealt at the deadline, worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Or maybe he plays the full season and he walks away as a UFA. But I
highly doubt that. I highly
doubt that. I think
I highly doubt that. I think if he plays for the Canadiens, he's gone by the deadline. I think unless they're in a playoff spot and they're like really challenging for a playoff spot and he's doing well, then they might keep him. But if the Canadiens are like out of the playoffs, which is the expectation, he's gone. Like,
for people wondering, the cap hit for Shea Weber, well, he has 4 years left. Obviously, his deal's at $7.8 million, but in terms of real cash, according to Pierre LeBrun, he hits $3 million next season and then $1 million each of the remaining 3 years.
And his contract is insured too, so that means Vegas technically doesn't have to pay anything. They don't have to pay Shea Weber anything because his contract is insured. Because of the fact that he's going to be on LTIR and he may never play again, his contract becomes insured by the league, and so Vegas doesn't have to pay him anything, which essentially just makes it even better. Yes, they still have the cap hit in their system, but the Vegas Golden Knights in real dollars, like you mentioned, they don't have to pay anything. They just have to keep him on their payroll, and that's it.
And according to Arpin Basu, Kent Hughes, well, he's just reiterating what he's saying at the press conference. He really likes Dadonov's offensive element that he could bring to the Montreal Canadiens. And at least for 1 year, I think it's very, I would say, beneficial for the Montreal Canadiens, especially for the younger players. So it seems as of right now, according to Kent Hughes, that Dadonov is expected to play for the Montreal Canadiens at the start of the season. So expect him to be in a Montreal Canadiens jersey, bleu, blanc, rouge jersey. He'll be wearing it. Go get yourselves a Dadonov jersey, guys.
But the other thing too that he said is that he didn't dismiss trading him, flipping him now for assets, and he also didn't dismiss trading away Josh Anderson. If you read on the further down on the transcript, he didn't say that he's actively shopping Josh Anderson, but he did say that if a deal came in that made sense for the Canadiens, they would pursue it. And he also said that they're trying to figure out Montreal's cap situation because, as we know, right, Montreal's cap situation is a little bit complicated at the moment. It just got better with Shea Weber's deal being traded away. Obviously, there's still the uncertainty with Carey Price, so we'll see what happens with that and what
And
Hughes decides to
there's
do with that.
and there's one thing I would like to show Montreal Canadian fans or fans of Nick the Great, and that is a picture of Nick Suzuki as the Montreal Canadiens captain.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful sight to see. Is he
Hope,
young? Definitely he's young,
let,
but
let's
the
let's
Montreal
hope.
Canadiens are building towards the youth movement. This is the first time that they're embracing a rebuild, I think, like ever, to be honest, and they have um a huge surplus of draft picks for this year's draft. That's what happens to be Montreal. And do not think for a minute that they're not going to trade up in the draft. They have way too many picks, and they're going to go for quality over quantity. I'm letting you guys know that that's going to happen. In terms of the NHL draft, we will be attending that event. We have tickets to go there, so we're going to be taking pictures and videos and trying to get a hold of some
We
prospects. We'll
we
try our
also hope
best.
we also hope to meet some hockey players, former hockey players. We have some we
Scouts,
have some things
management.
we have some things in the works. So just stay tuned for that in terms of what's to come for the podcast. But it's going to be some exciting times. It's going to be an exciting summer, and like Chris said, we're going to take some videos. We're going to take some pictures. You're going to see the video of the draft after we go to it and we've taken all the videos. But yeah, we've got some exciting things coming up on the podcast. So please, stay tuned, guys. Get excited because there's things that should be coming up and ramping up pretty soon.
And one last comment before I just wanted to say thanks to Shea Weber. Someone said that Evgenii Dadonov's UFA next season, as we stated before, makes roughly $3 million less than Weber. They got rid of Weber's 4-year, $8 million contract out of LTIR for
Yeah.
free. If Dadonov plays well, we may even get assets for dumping Shea Weber's contract. Massive win by Kent Hughes. So that's the last thing that we're going to mention in terms of the trade. But because we are fellow Montrealers, we like to take the time to thank Shea Weber for all he's given the Montreal Canadiens since the explosive and massive and unexpected Shea Weber for PK Subban blockbuster deal that happened back in 2016. Or was it 2017? I'm pretty sure it was 2016. Okay, perfect. I was right. Never doubt yourself, Chris. So we just want to thank him for everything he's given, especially his body, because we've seen his body deteriorate the last couple of years, and for him to play through all those injuries, to make it to a Stanley Cup final last year against the juggernaut and potential dynasty team in the Tampa Bay Lightning, that's very impressive, and he is the ideal captain. When you speak about characteristics that a captain has, it's Shea Weber. Yes,
Yep.
he didn't show up to a lot of events this year, but he was enjoying his retirement. Let the guy live. It is what it is. He's gone. This is a new era for the Montreal Canadiens, and we shall see what's next and what's in store for Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon, Martin St. Louis, and the rest of the Montreal Canadiens. And for Vegas fans, we would like to hear your thoughts about this deal. Do you like this deal in terms of moving Dadonov and making some cap space by putting Weber on LTIR? And Habs fans, do you like this deal? Are you happy to see Dadonov in a jersey? For obviously playing for the Montreal Canadiens. And what are your thoughts in terms of what's going to happen for the Montreal Canadiens this offseason and for the Vegas Golden Knights? What other moves can we see from both these teams? And will Montreal make the playoffs? And will Vegas make the playoffs after hiring Bruce Cassidy? And yes, we will making a Philadelphia video soon concerning the hiring of John Tortorella, signing a 4-year deal with them. So, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. We'll see you on the next. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this to any Habs fans or Vegas Golden Knights fans. Thank you, guys.